I'm Raj Shroff. I'm principal of Pine Strategy and Design.
So I wanted to start out with you and I had a chance to chat a little bit a couple weeks ago prior to recording this episode, and we talked in kind of in depth about how you built the business and how a lot of it came from kind of an organic connections you had with your network and your experience in the field. But just to start out and give a little bit of a context for people, can you describe the types of problems you solve and what kind of companies you consider to be your ideal customers?
Sure. We solve challenges, really looking at a lot of the work we do is in retail, and it's kind of broken up in three parts: research, so consumer insights, understanding how people consume, behave, and shop, so consumer and shopper insights; strategy, which would be, thinking through those insights and what might some implications be, and also, what some actions might be coming from those insights; and then design. And not everything goes into design in our work, but it would then manifest itself online or in a store, typically. The types of customers that we go and work with are consumer goods companies. I mean, most of our clients are consumer goods companies who want to understand any of those three things. And then we also work with retailers and who, also have the same kind of questions. And most of it's now, next, and future. So there's a portion of our business where people say, we need this fixed. We have this problem. We need to address it now based on the parameters of today. And then sometimes it's next, what's on the horizon, 2, 3, 4 years out, 5 years out. And then more often than not, lately, it's future. What does it look like 5, 6, 7, 8, 10 years out? Maybe not even what it looks like, but what should we be thinking about? What might be some scenarios? What are things that we should start to put on our radar in order to educate our senior leadership, our stakeholders, in order to kind of future-proof ourselves, or just make sure that we understand what's happening, what might happen down the road.
Is there any specific like case study type or customer that you've worked with recently that you can share, kind of just a snippet of like what that engagement looked like? They had this problem, you helped them with this, and the outcome was X.
Sure. One of the, without saying the client's name, they have, it's a global company, and they've got a senior leadership team that, run different business units across the world. And this team wanted to educate those senior leaders on what might be happening in their space, what's happening in the space today that could impact them: technology, science, human behavior, expectations. And then once we inform and educate them on that, start to create some hypotheses about, what that might lead to, where should they invest money, what could be potential partners, what could be companies they might want to buy. So it was, like I said before, more and more of our work is related to the future and trying to figure out what those next problems will be on the horizon, and then getting leaders to start to think in different, more creative ways about what those possibilities could lead to for their business and how they might capture that opportunity if they're ready for it.
And it sounds like there's a whole very broad range of different types of problems that could be solved. Obviously, the difference between retailers and packaged goods, they're connected, of course, but they're two different worlds in a lot of ways. When you think about who you're going to try to focus on, and I know we talked about, correct me if I'm misremembering, but we had talked about a lot of your business really does come from word of mouth, and it's just kind of this organic growth. But when you do think about, you're engaging with a potential customer or client, and you're thinking about, is this going to be a good fit? Do you have an image in your head or like a formula in your head of like, our best clients are the ones that have these characteristics?
I mean, so, and also just to give you a little bit of clarity, imagine everything we do is human facing. So we're not dealing in the back end of things, how retailers' operations might work, how their supply chain works. When you think about our work, there's a product on a shelf, and someone may or may not buy that product. We're typically not dealing with what that product is, how they might create that product, although we have done that in the past. But most of our work isn't related to that. it is we're starting to get interest in more in the packaging piece, but it really is the experience leading up to that. So how is someone using this product in their home, or how they might be using it in their product in the home, until the point when they say, I've got a problem, I need to go find a product that solves that problem. That journey from that moment when they say, I might want a new shampoo, or I might need a new tractor, or I might, I might not even know what I want, but I'm going to go on this shopping journey. We deal with all that. In terms of ideal, I think that we typically work with Fortune 500. Bigger companies tend to have a little more experience, be a little bit more disciplined, and tend to be easier to work with because they've worked with companies like us before. Not always, but often. And so, we want to figure out how sophisticated is this company, and do we want to work with that business in that industry? Do we think we can add value to them? What's their reputation? Do we know any people there? What's that working relationship like with people that we know who know them? And then, that's kind of it. If they're a leader in their industry, we tend to work with most of the leaders in the industry. And then from that standpoint, our stakeholders might be holding a research budget, might be holding a corporate strategy budget, might be doing a foresight or future. So there's certain disciplines within those companies where it's like, okay, these are the kind of people that run the kind of projects or have the kind of tensions to solve that we think we can solve and add value to.
And you and I, last time we spoke, we did talk about there's a little bit of an inflection point as far as scaling, right? So you think about like when you get a lot of your business from word of mouth, and then looking toward the future, if you want to actually scale in a more proactive way, that can be kind of a tricky transition. In addition to that, if that is still something that's top of mind for you, or, other things that you might have faced, what are some of the challenging parts of marketing your business or attracting these types of ideal customers, even with the word of mouth component? Has there anything that's been particularly challenging for you that you've had to overcome?
Yeah, for sure. I think, it goes back to like what your goals are. I think if your goals as a company are to create, a $1 billion business, and then create this system to do that, there's a certain path. That's not our goal. That's not my goal. Our goal is to, create a great business where people can have a nice life and we can solve really fun, creative problems. And, at this point, I don't need a $1 billion business. I like the work and I like working with certain clients. And I think if we wanted to scale up and become an IDEO size company, or a frog design, or some other type of big company, and then down the road want to be acquired by a big consulting firm, we'd have to look at it differently. Then we'd have to start to build solutions that are more scalable. We'd have to have a more regimented case study, marketing effort, white paper, very sophisticated, type of system. And there's times that I've thought, okay, do we want to do that? And certainly challenges would be, if we're a small shop and we're working in the business, finding time to step away and work on the business is challenging. I think I saw a post of a friend of mine on LinkedIn, and he said entrepreneurs, it's not necessarily that they pursue the money, there's a lot of the control aspect. So if you're a business owner and you like to control things, and things have gone well when you've controlled them, then it takes a lot of trust and faith in these new people to say things will go equally well when I release that control and hand it off to them. So I definitely would say I have, probably encountered that type of challenge, which is, who do I give this, responsibility to? And then are they going to do as good of a job, or are they going to have the passion as much as I do? Which, I think any business owner would say probably no one's going to have the same level of passion as they do. So for sure there's some challenges. And I think if it's all referral, then when we're doing cold calling, those conversions tend to be pretty low, because it's one thing to be pitching a commodity service and then going in on price, or and we don't do that. We don't go in and say we can do this commodity service for less. More and more of our work is complex, it's hard to articulate, it's hard to understand. We can't talk about it a lot. You're not going to see that work. And so then it becomes, the referral is natural because it's like, hey, we were in the trenches with these Pine guys or Pine team, the Pine folks, and they solved this problem, or they gave us clarity, and you should work with them because we know from our, anecdotal conversation that you're facing that same challenge. So I think the more foresight, futures, those types of challenging projects that we get, the harder it is to articulate and talk about in public and use that. If we were designing a flagship for, Prada, we could go say we did the flagship for Prada. Everyone can see that. They know the design. They think it's beautiful. That's a case study. And then a salesperson can go out and sell that, right? Or if we did, something like that. So there's a portion of our work that certainly is that, not for Prada, but you can see it. But then the other parts of the work that are a little bit less, let's say, commodity, become, really harder to sell and scale.
Yeah, and I think a lot of founders, entrepreneurs can relate to when you're getting most, if not all, of your business through referral, which is a wonderful thing. I mean, word of mouth is fantastic, right? But one of the challenges also comes up sometimes is when you're doing, you mentioned cold calling, when you're doing like active outreach, outbound, there's a kind of structure that it's a little easier to think about. Like there's a funnel and there's a journey and all this stuff. And a lot of times people can get, when it comes to the opposite direction and inbound and it's referrals, it's almost like this, well, it's just when it happens kind of thing. It's like, it feels like it can be out of your control. I don't know if that's, something you relate to, but when you think about, okay, how do we make the best out of every possible referral? Do you have a framework in mind, not only to help kind of facilitate those referrals and be more proactive with sparking those, but also like, is there a particular journey that even inbound referrals go through as far as like making sure that they understand what you do to some degree? Or is it just really like, let's get on a call and talk?
I've never reflected on it. I mean, I think if someone were to interview me and whiteboard this out, there probably is a process. The number one, I mean, there's, so typically that would be a referral to one of the closer, more senior people that we work with. And they would bring that business in, including me. So they might call one of my colleagues and know my colleague, and then that person brings that to me, and then we talk about it. Or if it comes directly to me, I would say the number one thing I do, one, we have to deliver great work, right? So we have to deliver great work. If we're not delivering great work, nothing else matters, because then that is the basis for the future work. Two, we have to be good to work with, and people have to enjoy us. And so it's like, we like working with these people, even if we deliver great work, but we weren't good to work with. I don't think that great work in certain instances can't overcome it. I mean, we're not doing brain surgery. So we have to have a bedside manner that is amicable, and good and constructive. Then I think it's a lot of it's networking, and the framework is keeping up with people, genuinely caring about these people you meet, and trying to add value for them to have success. So if it's an old client, sending them an article that I think would be interesting to them, would add value to them without us. Like, hey, you know what? I know you're on this career journey, you're on this life journey. Here's an interesting article that might inform you about something a competitor's doing, or something that I think you should know. And then they read that. So for us, our framework is just like genuinely caring and caring about the success of our clients, and having 100% confidence that we can empower them and they can be strong and great. And if they never need us again, that's fine. But eventually that will probably come back to some question that we'll have to answer, and may or may not turn into a project. But it's really just genuinely saying, man, these are interesting people. We like working with them. They have these problems. Let's go help them solve them. Sometimes they won't turn in anything, but that's okay, because they're on their own journey and they're doing their thing. So, I mean, I tend to be a little more philosophical on that stuff. And then that's not really scalable, right? You need to then build out a big team of people who are doing that and cultivating their own relationships. And, but it goes back to, what are your goals for your business? So that's I'd say no framework per se, but there probably is a system if you just analyzed it and kind of wrote it out that could be created and duplicated. But then, you'd need to really train the people on that relationship development and cultivation.
And I think it brings up a really important point that as complicated as marketing can be, or business building or selling or whatever it is, right? And as sophisticated as the systems can be and the technology involved, really ultimately comes down to what you just said. It's like, what people might say old school, but it's kind of as a, as a dig, right? It's just relationships. It's how do you build those and maintain those relationships in context to what you do, both as a person and human beings, but also like, hey, this is something that's relevant and it's something that we can help you, even if you don't become a customer or client or continue to work with us. And that's the basis of everything we see with content marketing. That's the basis of this podcast and other podcasts that companies have, right? So ultimately, it really is just like that. You said you're philosophical about it. It's like I'm equally philosophical about it, right? And I just think it's a really good point, because it's like, it doesn't have to be a really complex system, nor should it be. It's just some kind of framework in your mind of this is what we're putting out there and why, right?
Mhm.
And for, as we wrap up, for people that are listening, founders, entrepreneurs, even marketers and companies that are trying to figure out, like, how do we really shift our marketing and our focus toward more of these ideal customers, however we might define them, and fewer of the bad fit customers that we just know, like, they're not the right fit for us. We're not really the best fit for them. Do you have any kind of last tips, words of advice that you can share with them?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's red flags. I've been doing this for like, I don't know, maybe 18 years or something. And I mean, I had my own consulting company in my 20s and dealt a lot with bad clients and good clients. And over the years, I've worked with, mostly like 98%. At the end of the day, 98% of the work and the clients were good, but there's that 2% that are just bad, you know. I think you got to do your homework. Every company has a reputation, and in our industry, probably every industry, just everyone knows everyone. So like we had a couple of years ago, went into a client's office and we're talking to them and meeting with them, and we started rattling off all the people we knew that knew them, and they were like, wow, gosh, you guys do know a lot of people. We better be on our best behavior. Because what clients don't, I mean, maybe clients don't think about, they have reputation. Like there's a couple of companies I know that like no one really, everyone, there are some companies that will work with them, right? Because they don't have the discipline to say no, or they just don't have the ability to say no. But there are those companies that have a reputation of not being good to work with, not necessarily being smart in terms of how they work, maybe being very risk adverse, So I think you just have to figure out. And then at the end of the day, it comes down to individual people. So you might have a company and there might be, a certain stakeholder that people know as, oh yeah, they're cool, they're smart, you really like working with them. When that comes from someone that you trust and respect and know, odds are that's going to be okay. But if you ask someone and they're sort of coy and, they roll their eyes, and it's like, okay, you don't have to tell me, I get it. So, and when I teach a freshman class, or, have taught a freshman class at a local CCAD, and I talk about with the students, you're a brand, and, what's your brand, right? So all these people in these companies have brands. What they don't know, it's like everyone wants to buy Nike, everyone loves Starbucks, everyone wants to work with them. There's a reason. And then there's the bad brands. You have individuals who don't really get it, or selfish, or have high egos, or have really low confidence. And so they're very difficult to work with. They're not transparent. And then you have the really confident people that are friendly and courteous and respectful. So everyone knows that. You just have to dig. Everyone has a brand. Everyone has a reputation. Every company has a reputation. You just have to dig and figure out who that is. And then within clients, you've got new stakeholders, right? So you might have 5 stakeholders, 1 or 2 really cool, a couple of ones aren't really good. And you have to just do the best you can. But at the end of the day, you're going to have to work with people that you may not jive with. You have to make the best of it. And you also have to be able to say no. I think a lot of times in my world, and I've worked for, a couple of big agencies, because of the machine, right? I left to create Pine to not be this big machine that goes through cycles of layoffs and says yes to everything and has no standards or discipline because they've got to feed the machine. And that's a big part of the reason I left to do this. We can say no. We can say, we don't want to work with you. We're not going to say we know your reputation's bad. We'll just price it really high and say, well, if they're going to pay this, we'll do it for that. Or we will back out of it and say, we are too busy. We can't take on that work. So I think just that discipline and ability to say no is a big piece of this, and having that freedom and control is a big thing. But do your research, and you're not going to get it right all the time, but do the best you can.